After the Nashville Predators finished as the third worst team in the entire league, the one bright spot through a difficult regular season was the potential for a top draft pick. Yeah, no. The Nashville Predators ended up with their mathematical worst case scenario in the draft lottery. Let's talk about what this could mean for the Nashville Predators.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks again so much for making us your first listen of the day. We are, of course, your free daily Nashville Predators podcast. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am Ann Kimmel. I am a writer and co-host with Penalty Box Radio. I am usually joined by my partner in crime, Emma Lingen from the Hockey News. Emma is going to jump on tomorrow's full episode as we unpack everything that happened tonight at the draft lottery. But this is going to be a special abbreviated draft lottery reaction episode we want to get out tonight, get you thinking, get you talking, get you up to speed with what we know about the Nashville Predators and where they are going to pick in the 2025 draft lottery. Friends, as I said at the top of the show, the Nashville Predators went into this season with high expectations after an amazing offseason that had everyone talking with the signings of Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault, Brady Shea. Those expectations sort of crushed the Nashville Predators. We heard from Barry Trotz today in his postseason media availability. Again, on tomorrow's show, the full episode, we're going to talk about what Trotz shared about what went wrong this season. But ultimately, what matters are results. And the results of this past season, Nashville was the third worst team in the NHL behind the San Jose Sharks and the Chicago Blackhawks. Did not think on July 2nd that's where the Predators would be, but those are the facts. It's been a very challenging season for players, for the coaching staff, for the Nashville Predators fan base, for Barry Trotz. The one bright spot, the only silver lining to a season that can only be described as thoroughly underwhelming and disappointing was the potential to come out of this season and get maybe a top 3 pick in the NHL draft. Nashville has never really had a super high pick in the draft because they tend to be a first round exit playoff team. They kind of land in that middle of the NHL draft, especially in recent seasons. But that was the bright spot. After all of the disappointment, Nashville has good chance to get potentially a top 3 pick. Ladies and gentlemen, the draft lottery happened tonight, and it was worst case scenario for the Nashville Predators. They, of course, went into this evening's draft lottery, guaranteed a top 5 pick. That is exactly what they got. The Nashville Predators will pick 5th in the 2025 NHL draft. And while that sounds great, 5th out of 32, it actually feels really disappointing. And we say this all the time at Locked On Predators. Feelings are like farts. They are indicators of something. They don't always mean what you think they do. It may take some time, but this feels disappointing. The Nashville Predators were in such a unique position where they have these veterans signed in this window that Barry Trotz is kind of trying to thread a needle with, where you're going to get these veteran presence. And they had an opportunity to potentially add like that young spark, that young potential. I wouldn't say superstar. I wouldn't say Connor Bedard, Macklin Celebrini, because there really isn't necessarily one of those in this draft. This isn't a Connor McDavid draft, but they had the potential to put in a really good piece, especially if you're looking defensively. There's a defensive standout player. I think offensively, Michael Misa is sort of your top offensive standout player. And let's not lie, Nashville needs that. They're not going to get it in this draft unless, and we'll get to the unless in just a few minutes, but Nashville will select 5th. Here is what makes it so frustrating. It's who got to go ahead of us in the draft lottery. Do you know who got the overall pick? The New York Islanders. The Islanders went into this evening with a 3.5 25% chance of winning that first overall pick. And friends, that's exactly what they did. And I'm looking around like, hey, hockey gods, have we not done enough? Have we not been through enough this season to watch a team hop us like the New York Islanders did, to win with odds like that? I mean, the math is not mathing for me. And then you go to the second pick and you think, okay, maybe this can be it for Nashville. No, friends. Nashville does not get nice things this season. The Utah Hockey Club won the second pick in the draft. They moved up to the 4th spot. They could only hop up 4 spots. And then you start filling in based on results, which ultimately left Nashville with the 5th overall pick. Again, really, this feels like the worst case scenario. But you have to weigh out 5th overall pick out of 32. So how impactful is this pick likely to be? Well, it's just standing alone in this particular draft, in this moment in hockey history, it's tough to say. You know, if you stay at 5, you are going to miss out on top defensive prospect and the top offensive prospect, Schaefer and Misa. I really think that they are going to be off the board if the Predators stay at 5. And Nashville has been trying to get that elusive 1C, that career, that franchise changing player. And maybe they had their eye on Misa. We're not going to get him at 5. You're not going to get him at 5. You do kind of get into some kind of tier 2 players with the 5th overall pick in this particular draft. And look, there is talent there. There's Porter Mortone. There is James Hagens, perhaps will be around. He's kind of fluctuated up and down the draft order. Anton Frondell. So it's not that there is not talent there. But with the 5th overall pick, you have to put aside your hope that you are going to select a player that is going to hit development camp and training camp, knock your socks off, and make an NHL roster. I think with the 5th overall pick, if you stay at 5, that's likely in this particular draft, in this particular span of hockey time, that is not what you're going to get with the 5th overall pick. So how did Nashville end up here? What were their odds? Well, their odds were better than the New York Islanders for that first overall pick, friends. And look where we sit. The Nashville Predators had an 11.5% chance of winning the first overall pick. San Jose and Chicago had higher odds than the Predators. They had a 29.8% chance of getting that 5th overall pick before the draft lottery began. Their highest odds were for the 4th overall pick, but even that, like, why? Why give us one step up? Why not just stick it to the man? Because, we haven't been through that for 82 games of a regular season. So do we have any indication of what Barry Trotz might do now that he knows for sure that it is the 5th pick in the 2025 draft that he will be working with? Well, we are going to tell you what Barry Trotz had to say in media availability after the draft lottery. That's coming up.
An award-winning mattress can change your life. I speak from experience. It happened to me. After years of uncomfortable sleeps, I recently switched to Bear Mattress, and the results were instant. Bear Mattress is designed with a focus on recovery, cooling, and pressure relief to upgrade your sleep and improve your overall quality of life. I used to deal with night sweats, but Bear's best-in-class cooling ensures optimal temperature regulation, which prevents overheating and helps me stay comfortable all night long. Bear offers a wide variety of mattresses, but to get the right one for you, take their sleep quiz that matches you to your perfect mattress based on body type and sleep preferences. Go to bearmattress.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL at checkout to get 40% off site-wide. This offer is not available anywhere else. You have to use my promo code on the very last page of checkout to get this discount. That's bearmattress.com. Use my promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get 40% off site-wide. Bearmattress.com, promo code LOCKEDONNHL.
So the Nashville Predators found out this evening at the draft lottery that they will be selecting 5th overall. And while in the big scheme of things, that sounds divine to a team selecting 31st, after what the Nashville Predators have been through this season, to get an opportunity to get a top pick, I am underwhelmed. underwhelmed. We did get an opportunity as the media to hop on a Zoom call with General Manager Barry Trotz immediately following the draft lottery, engage his reaction to where the Predators ended up through this process. And I thought it was very interesting. The point that he really felt like he needed to reiterate is that you can get a good player with the 5th overall pick. You can get a good player with the 5th overall pick. Let's be honest. I'm guessing Barry Trotz is a little disappointed and thought maybe the hockey gods could throw them a bone as well. I think you know more about what you're going to get in the future as much as you can in the NHL draft when you're looking at a top one, the top overall pick, the 2nd overall pick, even the 3rd overall pick, 4th and 5th, then you're kind of not as sure as you can be when you're selecting an 18-year-old who is going to play a game several seasons down the road. The NHL draft, very different than the NFL draft. You aren't going right from the NCAA collegiate high level football into the NFL. There's a much wider gap in the NHL. And when you're selecting it 5th, you just have to be cognizant of the fact that a player in that range may not be as ready as a very obvious 1st overall pick or 2nd overall pick. Again, no guarantees. There are no guarantees in the NHL draft because of that gap between when you're selecting a player and when they're likely to become a consistent contributing member of an NHL team. But it's disappointing not to get a little bit of a higher pick. But Trotz really wanted to emphasize they know they can still get a really good pick with that 5th overall selection. So what is next for Barry Trotz as he looks at where he is at, the teams in front of him on the draft board, the team behind him on the draft board? What are the next steps? Well, Barry Trotz, even today, has been meeting diligently with the scouting department for the Nashville Predators. They have been out traveling. Barry Trotz has actually been out traveling, getting eyes on some of these players, these potential draftees. So the scouting continues. This is a long process, but it continues. It gets a little bit more intense. They can dial in a little bit more now, knowing exactly where they pick. So what is on the agenda? Well, the first thing Barry Trotz says is back to the meetings. He will be meeting first thing in the morning with the scouting department. Tomorrow around lunchtime, media will have availability with some of the scouting department to talk about draft strategy, this particular draft, what they're looking for, how they're viewing this opportunity now that we know they have the 5th overall pick. So there's going to be more information coming later this week about that we're going to be sharing on Locked On Predators. So make sure you come back. Next thing Barry Trotz says he's going to be doing, he's going to be making some phone calls. He wants to get a lay of the land when it comes to the teams that are drafting ahead of the Nashville Predators. Do they know for sure what they are doing? Are they potentially interested in making a deal with a team interested in moving up? And so much about what happens in front of you determines what you can do. It's not just the basics of like, well, that player is off the board, although that's a big factor. It has to do with, are those teams in front of you looking for a positional pick? Are they locked in on, we need to fill this specific hole and there is this one player who is going to fill that need for us, so we are locked in on that? Or is there wiggle room? Or are they looking for draft capital? Remember, that is something Barry Trotz has a lot of in his pocket. The Nashville Predators have 3 first-round picks in this draft. A little disappointing, the first one's at number 5, but we're trying to move past that. The next thing on Barry Trotz's agenda is, of course, the NHL Combine. That is scheduled for June 1st through the 7th. That's going to be up in Buffalo, New York. They are going to head up there. They're going to get an eye on a lot of these top prospects at the NHL Combine. Interesting little fact that he dropped that they already have some interviews scheduled with a number of the top 10 prospects in this draft. So they will sit down with these players. Of course, they're going to watch them on the ice, watch their on-ice skills, but it's just as important to this scouting team to get an idea of who these players are in sit-down interviews. What is kind of their hockey IQ? How do they read different situations? How do they communicate? What do they need from a coaching staff? Where do they feel they are developmentally in their growth? So all of that is information that weighs just as heavily almost for the Nashville Predators as that on-ice product. So there is a lot going on. They also are just going to prep for a variety of scenarios. no matter what you think is going to happen on draft night, you have to be ready for anything. And we've seen that a number of times. We've also seen drafts where it has just gone smooth. There have not been a lot of trades. There's not been a lot of drama, but you have to be prepared for everything. And I think Barry Trotz is going to look through different scenarios. The phone calls to other GMs are going to help them understand what they need to be prepared for. If there is an option to move up, if they may be interested in moving down. So those phone calls are going to help them put together a variety of scenarios that could pop up on that first night of the NHL draft, whether they stay at 5, whether they try to move up, whether they try to move down. And with the 5th overall pick, it's an interesting, I hate to use this phrase because we hate it, but it's mushy middle. Is a team really willing to give up a lot, especially in this particular draft, for the 5th overall pick? Is there a player that has so caught the fancy of another team that he'll be available at 5 and a team is willing to make a deal? I don't know in this particular draft if those stars are going to align just right. So Barry Trotz, he has to be ready for absolutely everything. Again, he said could move up, could move back. But the thing he wanted, I think, everybody to know is that you can get a really good player with the 5th overall pick. And that is what I'm trying to cling to as we face the fact that the Nashville Predators had their best chance at a 1st overall draft pick, a top 3 draft pick. They haven't had that in so long. And it just slipped through their finger. And it's even more disappointing. And I think it hurts a little bit more because of the regular season the Nashville Predators had. And here's the thing, the roster is not going to change dramatically between last season and next season. And I don't know that they can underperform this well again to give the Nashville Predators this kind of chance in the draft lottery. I mean, anything's possible. We saw that last season. So it's a little bit disappointing again. So what are the potential things that Barry Trotz could be doing? He has dropped some breadcrumbs over the course of the end of last season in conversations with media. We're going to talk about what Barry Trotz may potentially try to do with this 5th round pick coming up. This special episode's brought to you by our great friends at Wonderful Pistachios. If you are looking for a snack that is both delicious and nutritious, you need to crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they are packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. I personally am a no shells variety girl. It is the perfect grab and go snack for busy days. Whether I am sitting here at my desk trying to get some work done, or I am on the road headed down to Bridgestone Arena, or I just hit the point in the day where I know I need some protein, it is a great go-to snack. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. So get snacking and get cracking with a snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. All right. Again, Nashville Predators selecting 5th overall in the NHL draft in 2025. Disappointing. A little disappointing. Yes, the greatest odds were for the 4th overall pick. Somehow that would have felt a little bit better, even though it's only 1 pick more. So we've talked about what Barry Trotz feels like he can get in the 5th overall pick. He says you can get a very good player. Typically, what we have heard in the past from the scouting department, and this is something that we're going to hear from them on tomorrow, whether this philosophy changes. Typically, the drafting philosophy for the Predators has been we pick the next best available player. But with a pick number 5, with pick number 5, are they going to be potentially more positionally focused in that pick? I think they have to be. We don't know when the Predators are going to get this opportunity again. It feels like this roster that they are going to take into next season has got to perform better. Just blind luck and odds, which tonight were not in our favor. But they really have been trying to find that elusive center. You can draft that center and develop that center. You can trade for that center. It is very difficult, though, to find a team that has a top center, a 1C, who says, you know what we'd like to do? We'd like to give that up for the 5th overall pick. It's going to take a lot more than just this pick in the draft for Barry Trotz to wheel and deal a quality 1C, a younger 1C onto the roster for next season. But this 5th overall pick could be a piece of that if they opt to do that. I do think if they stick with the pick, they are going to be looking more positionally because of where they are in this draft. The other things that we have heard from Barry Trotz so far, he did mention on a radio show towards the end of the season, he was asked kind of in passing, if the draft were to happen tonight, do you know who you would pick? And he said, yes. Now, he did not go on to give a name of who that was. My guess is it's going to be a top offensive piece. If I had to guess, I would say Michael Misa, but that is pure speculation on my part. That is not in any way reporting. He also said in today's media availability that he continues to encourage the scouts to take, quote, big swings. What does that mean? Well, if there is a player who has something about their game, something about their personality that really catches the eye of the scouts, they might take a chance on somebody like that instead of playing it safe. And I think we saw a little bit of that with last year's pick in Igor Surin. This is a player who maybe isn't the tallest, but this is a kid who has just such a tenacity. And there is something about that I think appeals to Barry Trotz and this particular scouting staff as well. Again, we're going to talk to Jeff Kelty and Tom Nolan tomorrow. We're going to get a better idea of where this number 5 pick, how this is going to influence what they are looking for. Some things to keep in mind as we, know now where Nashville is. Barry Trotz has draft capital to make a trade. So if there is still that one unnamed player that he has an eye on, there is potential for Trotz to make some moves. And, we're going to talk over the coming weeks here, what teams ahead of Nashville could potentially be interested in making a deal. Again, this is not a draft with a Bedard or a Celebrini, but if Trotz has his eye on someone, he may be able to work a deal. Another thing to note, Trotz is very involved right now in the scouting. He is out on the road, eyes on players, talking to players himself, really involved in this process. So I think it's going to be interesting to see with this, highest pick that the Preds have had in a long time, how much influence Barry Trotz has and where this scouting staff lands as far as how they approach this draft. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens with the Nashville Predators. Again, not the outcome that I think we were all hoping for the Preds. They were hoping for maybe a top 3 pick after all we've been through this season, watching this team struggle. It would have been a really interesting scenario for the Predators to struggle like they did, get themselves a top pick in the draft, like a top tier guy, and see what happens maybe 2 seasons from now. But friends, not to be. Predators going to be picking 5th overall in the draft. Of course, we are going to have tons of draft coverage coming up on Locked On Predators. On tomorrow's episode, we're going to touch some more on the draft lottery results. We are also going to go in depth on what we learned from Barry Trotz in his media availability today. He talked about the previous season. He talked about coaching. He talked about the path forward. There is a lot of meat on that bone. So make sure you join us tomorrow for the full edition of the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of the day. Thanks for joining me for this special draft lottery reaction episode. Again, Emma's going to be back tomorrow. We're going to get her take on this. We're going to talk through draft lottery, and we're going to talk about what we learned from Barry Trotz. Hope you guys have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow.